Yo, how's everybody doing? This is Mr. Anderson, True Crypto 28 on Twitter. All right, guys, just wanted to check in with you, do a little bit of a market update. We got the month's end, so we could talk a little bit. Gonna try to keep it short. I'll do my best. If I go off on a couple tangents, I apologize. I got a tendency to do that, right? But let's go ahead and talk about this beautiful action that we have in front of us, just to see how Bitcoin's been able to rise from the ashes. We don't have to relive this. We covered a lot of this stuff in the previous updates. I've been on quarantine myself. I've got a wife and 4 children, and we've been out on the ranch and just trying to keep her sane for the most part. So, haven't been able to do a lot of these updates, mostly because of the fact that where I am, I'm out in the boondocks essentially, where I'm staying at the moment, I should say. And my property there is beautiful, and I do have high speed internet, but what I don't have is the ability to upload at high speed. So I have download speed, good for watching movies, good for all those type of things, but not the upload, which means to try to make a video and upload it literally is a multi-day process to upload it, and more than likely it's going to get interrupted during that time and not work anyway. But here we are today, and soon we'll be hopefully back in business as far as getting some more consistent ones. But we did pretty damn well in the last one. Things have been pretty smooth, pretty easy. What we're looking at here is a good old up channel. We've been speaking about this on Discord. Obviously, a lot of you guys aren't a part of Discord. That's fine. But we've been speaking about this on Discord for quite some time. Specifically, once we got into this area, we were looking for a hold of 6608 on close, right? That was our magic number on good old Discord. I mean, we held that baby to the number, never closed under it, got the beautiful bounce. She started to fade back a little bit, got a second chance at it, got the morning star type pattern, which is nice, and just basically ran up. Really just thinking you're going to run up to the top of your channel, right? But of course, once we got there, you see it pop on through. We'll talk about more of that range in a little bit. I do want to speak about the monthly, and to do so, I'm actually going to go into the futures first. So let's go into futures. I just typed on the wrong keyboard. That's not going to work. There we go. I'll probably do that a bunch of times. Going to have another keyboard right in front of me. All right. Well, first of all, once we go into futures, if you wonder about this particular chart, this is the one we always use in here, right? This is the old monthly scale lines, so that's nice. If you wonder what you're looking at, you can bring it here to the monthly. And, basically, excuse me, I said monthly scale. I meant weekly scale lines. And only reason I do bring this up, this is my first tangent, so I apologize, but you guys might remember we were talking about this particular pattern, right? We broke out, finally topped off, came back, visited here again, came back again. And we were speaking about this before it happened. That's why we get this little up-down arrow. You're either going to bounce or break hard. And one thing we did speak about over and over and over again before this happened, right, was this. The massive move lies ahead of us. And then when it happened, before it happened, which is makes it more realistic, the fact that it was before it happened, what we said, aside from the fact that we were very crystal clear of not to lose this level, and once we'd lost it, that's when we began to really shuffle down. But ultimately, the reason I bring this up is that we talked about a bust pattern, right? The bust pattern is where you break out of your consolidation, and then it ends up as a head fake. That you guys might be used to that type of pattern on a low time frame, but to see something like that possibly develop on a very high time frame is pretty exciting, right? Now, are we there? No. Obviously, we stopped out exactly at resistance so far, so that makes sense. Not only, of course, the more important horizontal resistance, which we'll talk about a little bit, but also this diagonal resistance right here and there. So we could add another one of these guys. If I wanted to clone this guy real quick, I could bring his friend right there because we certainly got another touch of that. It's not why I came to this chart. Didn't mean to show you that at all. But the point is you are back into that area. So you fall back into this same tightening area, and basically next move in or out wins again. You basically get that scenario again. Popping out on close, even something like a daily close, would get you a decent jump. Now, this is scaling, so technically you could pop out, pack back in the same week, and that could be something that could be another head fake in the other direction. So it gets a little complicated, but the idea, though, is that there should be something strong in terms of the movement as you exit this. There's time, though. This can carry on, obviously, till June or so. And normally in equities, you wouldn't see it carry on so far, right? And they like to break at that 65, 75% range of the triangle that you're drawing. And these are subjective as well. So some people might have a little bit different version of how they draw it. But regardless, the reason I bring that up is the fact that we're back into that range at the moment. break up to the upside, yeah, you can make a run certainly at this 10.5 level. To the downside, then yes, you are looking at least, to retest this particular area more likely. Of course, 7.8 is a key number that I'll talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to bring this up. Now, didn't really want to show you any of that, so let me just kind of clear it. That wasn't the intention of coming here. I really just wanted to look at these good old moving averages. And on the weekly, the structure isn't so hot, but you did break out above these guys. What do you see more importantly, though? Same situation. We're seeing tightening, right? You see the moving averages coming together. When you see that, that's momentum building up at scale. When I say at scale, I mean in a high time frame, right? And anytime you go back in history, when you start to see these moving averages real close, you can believe there's going to be some type of explosive action, right? So when we see that, you get an explosive action. When you see it, you get an explosive action. When you see it, believe it or not, we're not done with the explosive action. Continued volatility, and if you're a trader, that's a good thing, right? Tightening these guys, explosive action. Now, what's interesting, you did reclaim the 21 week, which is necessary. Ultimately, you're not going anywhere if you don't have that. But look, market structure is bearish. Let's not lose sight of that. At scale, we got lower lows all the way down, lower highs, lower lows. This is another, at the moment, lower high. Now, you'd have to lose a significant amount at the moment for this to be confirmed as a local top, at least on this scale. But and it also has some time to put itself in a decent position. But you could easily see it come back, maybe get one more test, maybe even do a wick, see that wick get rejected, then that would be a little bit more bearish as well. And then you also wouldn't need such a high number as well, meaning you don't need, when I say high number, I mean such a distant number. Right now you need 7,600 change on futures to confirm this as a local top, because it takes some time to get confirmation. But regardless, we'll get back into this in a minute. Because we could talk about the weekly close, because this is close, right? So on futures, this is close. It's a little complicated when you get into the fact that futures close on Friday, actual Bitcoin closes on Sunday. So you get a little funky scenario in there. But all in all, futures does pretty well with some of this. You don't get too many situations where a close gains a level and then rejects off it where spot doesn't or something along those lines. So the reason I bring that up is that this was pretty good close, right? You basically have this level right here. Remember this guy? Okay. Held it, went. If you guys just want an explanation of it, all right, we're going to pull back. This was a hell of a run, very beautiful run. And it began to pull back. And then when that occurred, it did try. This was an ugly candle. We talked about it at the time. It looked terrible. But it did try to bounce off this little bit of a area of resistance that would make sense. Now, of course, a lot of times you can come in here once you do get your week and say, hey, you know what, let me just draw myself a little level like that. And if I lose this level, we're gone, right? So that's the idea. Once you try to hold that support, I can try to draw close to close like that and know that I don't want to lose it. And of course, sure enough, you'll see that over and over, by the way. If you happen to get that type of setup like this, it could be pretty nice. Now, sometimes they'll drift lower. I might be losing you some on some of that, so don't worry. You don't have to learn something new on that one. But the key with this, though, is that sometimes when you draw the diagonal, as subjective as they are, remember that the horizontal is always more important. So if you're using a diagonal at all, just understand, one, you drew it. It's subjective, right? You're just trying to get into an idea that others might see as well. And then if you can collectively put it into some solid TA, you can make some sense of it, utilize it as a trade. But you'll see this happen a lot. What did I do? I draw a little bit of an area here. You break down. But look, we come back, and at the moment, it's being rejected at this scale. Interesting, right? Well, we call that a shadow, right? So you end up with a shadow. This is a geometrical shadow, right? Because it's a diagonal. So it's something that's very interesting. It's no different than the same diagonals that we see like this, right? You start chipping away at them. Eventually, you break through the cloud. You break through the shadow. I call them shadow back in the day. I used to work on Ichi, right? So Ichimoku cloud. Basically, if you're familiar with that at all, it's just not really a moving average system, but it's a one-look type of system. And many years ago, when I started to get a little bit decent at trading, I used to like to utilize that system a little bit. As I started to get into moving averages, I kind of went away from it eventually, but it's still a good system. But the point is, you'll hear that type of communication a lot in Ichi, which is clouds and cloud cover and things of that nature. But anyway, regardless, the point is that you'll see these shadows, and you'll find yourself in a position to say, okay, another form of the resistance, right? Because you have the horizontal resistance, and that's the key. But ultimately, what I would find interesting is that if you're going to bring it down here like this, I say, all right, look, we were marching our way up. This was our close. This was a pivot of the close right there. And then we went. Now we came back down the other side, attempted to pivot, now here. Now you can see we clearly closed above this pivot. I do like to look more local, right? And the more local example here was this guy right there. So we say we attempt it, tried to hold it, and then lost that level. Well, we've now gained that level, so that's a good thing. It gives you the opportunity to say, hey, maybe you can live in here again. You don't want to lose it on a weekly close because then you're back into the situation of hoping this guy holds more likely. If not, looking back to this guy over here. Regardless, and really what I mean here is falling back into this range. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Not the worst close is my whole point. Let's see what spot does also. Is actually what I say, not the worst close. It's a pretty damn good close. You end up with a little bit of a wick there, but come on, that's a hell of a move when you're talking about we closed 75.95 and ended up 88.40 on close and futures. Pretty damn good. So that's that. Let me go to the monthly very quickly. Monthly's super interesting. We spoke last month. I'll duplicate this on spot. All I want to show you is these moving averages. Reclaim of the blue 21 EMA. Why is that important? Okay. In fact, I'm going to switch directly to spot and forget, they look the same anyway. So again, I'm doing the thing where I'm typing on the wrong keyboard. Forgive me. Okay. Don't worry about that right now. What we see here is that we talked about this last month, right? We got the close. We lost at 21. I said it better close above the 21 next month. It has to. Otherwise, you get a couple closes below the 21. You're looking at a multi-month lower low accumulation type scenario at best. And that's exactly what we spoke about. You can watch that video if you like. But the idea is that it happened. They reclaimed it. Not only did they reclaim it, the EMA structure looks damn good. Now, that's a little bit of a product, right, of the fact that this is the best performing asset in the last 10 years, maybe best performing asset ever. So you're going to have, of course, a pretty good monthly EMA structure if you're at 8,000 and you're coming off, under 1,000 when you look at it this type of scale. So there's a little bit of to that, to it's like, all right, well, can you throw that out? Should you throw that out? The other side of it is this. I don't play monthly scale EMA patterns, right? I mean, or really at all. I'm not playing off the monthly too often. Now, I might get an idea from the monthly. Don't get me wrong. I can say, hey, a bearish bias, or this looks bearish, or if we reject, it plays into my bearish tone here. Obviously, this is bearish market structure, so that's all well and good. But am I ever in a situation where I say, hey, look, I'm in clearly a ranging situation. This is ranging at scale, the triangle, right? Meaning that you have a higher high way up here, you got a lower low way down there, you're somewhere in the middle. Am I going to say, hey, based on the EMA structure alone, am I going to take this for the next 2 years? No. If you're going to take something for the next 2 years, it's because you believe in it, right? You're in love with it. You are willing to lose every penny you're utilizing for it. I mean, that should be your mindset, anything that you're in a long-term investment on. So the point that I'm making there is that, yes, the EMA structure looks pretty damn good at the moment, but that didn't mean much right here. We basically shot up here. You had yourself a nice candle on a monthly. We talked about this. A little dicey because we didn't take out the wick high. Would have preferred to do that back then. But this is also something where we started to come into this pandemic type of thought process. And all in all, this was a nice candle. And in fairness, we had nice follow through, right? It did follow through to 10.5. So there was enough of a trade there on the lower time frames. And when you're talking about lower time frames, those are still damn good time frames on a weekly, on a daily. In this case, when you're coming from a monthly, and it went all the way to 10.5 before rejecting. So the structure itself usually means some fall through. It would be pretty surprising if we don't make another crack at this high. We might not, but just in general, with that type of nice candle structure, the bulls are in too good of a shape at the moment to not get another crack of it, in my opinion. My opinion could be wrong. I'll trade my chart, not my heart, so don't worry about that. The point is that just like this, you would expect some follow through, and it would probably bode well for bears. I think even a bear would rather see a slightly higher high, right? Something looking like this. It's on a daily scale. Now look, on a daily scale, I'm going to switch gears here from that monthly real quick because I do want to shorten this video. What do we see? Let's just go back in time, right? So you ended up in this situation here. I do want to kind of talk very briefly how we got here. We talked about this throughout on Discord. I mentioned that this was a prior accumulation, right? This is a very clear cut. This is an actual Wyckoff accumulation, not the BS that you might see on Twitter and YouTube and things of that nature. This is a legit one, right? And you're in that accumulation. This is your river of supply. It goes back. You can trace it back and see that the resistance makes a ton of sense. We're not going to do that right now. We've done that on multiple videos before. But the idea is that once you took it, you came up with a little bit of a backup to the creek, right? You basically come back to where that support resistance flip was, take off, just a beautiful run, come back. This was the area that should have held, right? Normal situation. Actually, I apologize. The area that should have held was somewhere in here, but we're not going to relive that. She ends up dumping out, but still, it tried to hold that creek. It actually tried for a few good days, which is very impressive considering the fact that there was a global pandemic breaking out. And then, look, everyone needed dollars. It went. This is one of the few times in my life where I'll say, news not necessarily leading, because I would say that this was the lead, right? So the structure was clearly bearish, but just such a clear effect of the fact that people wanted cash. And it flushed out. We talked about this, on this day. We posted the fact that it damn sure felt like a bottom, but it doesn't really matter. Is it? Will it be? Who cares? None of that matters to making money in trading, in my opinion. But the idea is this. We started to climb slowly in this channel, right? This channel is drawn from close to close, and then I clone it, take it to the top close right there. You see how well it was just worked out. This is a spot chart. And basically, the key with this is that this is very orderly. When you see this, the idea of an up channel is that you're not getting those extreme wicks where you're worried about getting yourself too extended. This was nice and orderly and confined. But what were you seeing for the most part on Twitter? Oh my God, the volume is falling. We're gonna die, right? So that's what everyone says, which doesn't make any sense. Look at this volume compared to everything in the past. It makes no sense at all. You just had capitulation of some sort. Again, maybe it was a capitulation, maybe it was the capitulation, doesn't matter. Some sort of capitulation occurred, and you don't have higher volume after capitulation. It just doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know where people come up with it. They do. I mean, even this guy didn't have the greatest volume, but that was a damn clear accumulation. Bitcoin likes to do these short accumulation. And look, I'll tell you what, this was a very short one here. If you look at that on a 4-hour, definitely an accumulation pattern, just not a very big one, right? And someone was there ready to scoop it up for sure. You could see that. I mean, it's perfect. Here's your failure point, come back and test it, reject, come back again. This is testing the supply, test it a couple of times, heavy rejection. These should drift lower, right? Normally, but it's always about that reset. When you reset and you're not flipping lower, that's showing that underlying strength. That means someone's collecting, right? So that's the collection effort. Pop up. So now we broke the range, come back a little back up to that little low time frame creek holds. It actually had a double hold here, which was intriguing. It took its time, right? There's a secondary accumulation there within that pattern. It's amazing. You see how sideways this guy went? This is a double accumulation pattern. And then it starts to go up, it holds again, and you're seeing just a beautiful formation here, and then finally she goes, right? So very orderly. Now it's jumped out. I'm very curious to see if we hold the top of this range. If not, you still have this backup range to fall back in as far as the up channel, but it's intriguing. Now let's get a little more specific. What am I looking at? H4. Oh, by the way, so on the monthly, because we are talking about a monthly close, I know I jumped out of that for a minute there because I was looking at something else. Monthly's way down here, right? So get back into the 7,500 range, and we'll talk about that again as far as the monthly 21. But it does make sense, right, to give a test back if it wants to. It doesn't have to in this situation. It's been traversing, that's fine. But you could still draw a healthy picture of pull back, test this guy, almost look like a failure intraday, and then go. And then doesn't have to take off and run, but basically find itself back probably above 82, 8,300 would still be pretty bullish in my opinion, or at least look like something like an indecision where you can draw out a high time frame range. So we'll watch how that goes. At the moment, I did explain that I would expect a little bit of follow through in this. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. But if I go to the weekly scale now, is there anything significant there? I mean, again, it looks good. These guys are coming together. It's pretty healthy. I mean, that's pretty healthy. It doesn't look, I'll tell you again, other than the fact that the market structure here tells me that this guy just tested this, this does not have the look of being ready to stop completely. It doesn't have that look. Doesn't mean it won't, right? Maybe it'll change into that look, but it doesn't look like that right now to me at all. I don't have that vision. This is not a scenario where I would look at this and go, oh, yeah, this is good. No. Overcoming this guy and doing it in an orderly fashion and then taking it out was pretty damn good. The Bulls got to feel pretty comfortable. Now, Are they still around? Are they setting things up? We'll talk about that in a minute. Where things can change pretty quickly on that. How do they change? All right, well, first and foremost, on the weekly, let me get rid of the volume because it gets annoying. By the way, I will say, same thing, if you want to watch the last video, we were very specific in that video, right? I said, we, meaning you, me, we were talking basically in explaining what. This was a very key level, and this was video that I'm talking about, I think it was April 1st or something. We said, look, this is a key level, this was a key level, and guess what? Up here was the next key level, and we said, absolutely this thing could run up. In fact, it's probably likely. Why? Pendulum, right? So you get that pendulum pattern of what? Where's the midpoint? Where's this thing been? This thing's been in the 8,000 range for years, guys. For years. In fact, May, March, May? Look at May. May 2018, 8,200, 8,500, 9,000. May 1st, 2019. What are we talking about? 8,200, 8,800. I see 7,800 in there, right? It's exactly where we're at. It's exactly where we're at. What's the point of me bringing that up? At scale, this guy's putting in work, right? You see that pendulum pattern, right? You come down, all the way back, come down, back up above, down, right? Guess what? Came right back now to that level again, and now dealing with the next level up. So we talked about this key level. Well, you gained it. Absolutely gained it. I'm going to go to this other chart here to show you some of these levels I'm talking about. So we gained this level right here. If it doesn't look so clear, don't worry about it, guys. I'm going to kind of point it out. It's more generalization than anything else. But right there's a level that you gained. Of course, the one you wanted to gain really was this one, was that backup test. That's this level right there. Reason why I'm not getting too specific because I don't want to draw more lines for you. I just want to give you an understanding. This one has lines on it for a reason. I know it might be annoying, but I'll explain it in a minute. But you see this level right here. This was the backup test of the previous accumulation. And if you're seeing where that aligns, that's right here, right? So we came, paused a little bit. Some people got nervous over this, and then this thing just went. It's not a surprise, right? It's not a mistake. It paused. This is what I call the bleed up pattern, as I explained to my guys. I said, hey, this feels like an imminent breakout is coming, a big boy breakout, right? I did express that. I was very clear that, hey, look, in a world where you don't have pandemics and weird situations, for sure this is that breakout pattern, right? It's just the curveball here was the environment, basically. But this is exactly what that looks like because this is, forget the pullback. There is no pullback, right? This is a situation where you couldn't get the price down. We've seen that before. We saw it way back here. I mean, it's no different than this scenario right there. Back here, same thing. We were able to call that one out pretty well, too, back at that time. It doesn't really matter. By the way, when I point these things out, it doesn't mean, if I called it on my analysis, it doesn't mean I played it right? So there's a difference there, guys. I hope you understand that. So analysis and actually being awake maybe to play at the perfect time or reacting, right? If I knew it like Nostradamus, right, I might have had 10 or 20 million contracts on it, right? So I did. I had some decent positions in here, and I did fine with it. But the idea is, I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm saying like, "Hey, I played this perfect. I got the bottom, I got the top, I sold in between the highs and the lows." No. We're just talking about scenarios. We did happen to do pretty well in the analysis on that, but things have to revolve around my schedule, around my clock, around my family, and that's always going to be what's most important to me. It should be most important to you as well. And in between there, if you find some good trades, more power to you. But you do want to have the analysis side of it so that you prepare for every possibility. And when you see the possibility, you can react, right? So when it is on your schedule and you are trading, you can react. You say, oh, yeah, I did see that. I played that scenario out already. And that's what came up, right? So here we are. Here's that breakout again. We see so many different levels that come into play because we've now been dealing with these levels for, as I mentioned, a couple of years. So we're building. That's good. It's good to be building, especially if you pop out. If you're a long-term bull, if you pop out on the north side of it, that's good because now you built out proper liquidity points there to where you can say, all right, well, this is filled out nicely. Go ahead, send it, and put yourself into a position to where you don't feel like you have this big gap of lack of liquidity at these areas. So that's kind of the idea and the mindset. But regardless of that, getting into local action now, we'll wrap this guy up. The daily does break out. On this day, what did we say? We said, that's not a short me candle, right? So it was very clear about that. Not a short me candle. Why? Well, that's why, because it then broke out another $600-700 or so, and then it gave you not a short candle either, but it gave you that indecision candle range likely type of scenario. You take out your low, yes, you might say, hey, high time frame, I have the opportunity to pull back, but all the time frames for the most part are in favor of the bulls right now. So you got to be a little bit careful. The work has to be done quickly by the bears. If not, the bulls are going to step right on in, as they should. They're in an advantageous situation. Time can heal that, but that's the circumstance. Now, what are all these lines? Blue line. Why do I have them? Really quickly, monthly, blue level. I'll take care of these moving averages for a second just to kind of clear some of the noise that we might be looking at. All right. So this is the monthly level. I have this one drawn, but really you could have two if you want. You could have this one and this one right there. This is a monthly scale resistance. So although we had a bullish engulfing of the body right here monthly, which is a very nice candle, and usually it gives you a little bit of fall through, but regardless, you see these lines here. This is a level that I would date back to, excuse me, let me get this out of my way, back to April 2018. Topped off right there, rejection, fall. This was part of that eventual move down to 3,000 off of the all-time highs. And sure enough, we came at it here. Once we grabbed it, good job. Tried to hold for a couple months, actually 2-3 months. On the third month, it failed, right? Then it rejected. Here's the rejection of those levels, right? You say, well, you got two levels here. That doesn't make sense. Well, guess what? We have a little trickery here because you did gain the level. Sometimes that happens in trading. It's not just binary. It's not cut and dry. So this is the fake out, right? You gain the level. Hey, life is good. I gained this level. I gained that level. We should run up. Well, I have some news for you. We did discuss this. It did run up. But on the monthly scale, it did not hold, right? So it ran up to 10.5. It gave you what you needed, so it did its work. It did a good job. It's just that on that monthly scale, a little bit of a head fake and reverse actually making this resistance a bit stronger. So when that happens, come up. I don't see this as a nasty rejection or, oh my God, we rejected it. It's terrible. It's the end of the world. No, man, it's a rejection of a level. We just came off, let's be serious, 3,800 or so, and you flew up to 9,300. I would expect that. I mean, we talked about this in Discord again. Not tooting horns, but we said, what did we say on Discord? And you guys can confirm. I think we said 9,200 to 9,500 looks like a chore, right? That was the exact wording. I'm not going to bring that up for you, but that was the idea, and I can show you that on a lower time frame if we have time. But that was the concept of it. But that's what the blue lines are. So that's where you want to get above. And then you get above, what really matters is closing above them on a monthly scale so you can talk about bigger dreams again. But ultimately, not there yet. Now we can't even talk about it for another month, so it doesn't really matter right now. At the moment, that's a rejection. And even if you claim it intra-month, it's not going to matter because you got to wait till you get that monthly close for it. So with that said, I know things are really moving at big scales. You look at the 2-week, and the thing looks like it makes a lot of sense. You look at this 2 week, you go, oh, okay, look at this thing. And really, if you start drawing like close to close, you start seeing this megaphone come out as well. And it's like, I wouldn't actually draw them both from here. I would go high to low, like this. You start to see a little bit of an expansion here. It's not ideal, but you kind of see a little bit of that coming out. The idea is that when you get those widening patterns like that, which is, again, I'm typing on the wrong keyboard. It's hilarious. I gotta move this thing. Anyway, so when you get these type of widening patterns, they put you into a position to where you could see something very explosive. And that makes sense. We've been seeing things very explosive. So it is what it is, and that does open you up for the fact that, yeah, you could come back and test lows, but what would that mean? How would you get there? You're not going to go there in one swoop. That's what my little red levels are. This was a good claim right here. You see what I'm looking at? We did gain this level right here. It was a big loss. What was that? Well, this is the accumulation zone that we were talking about on the last videos. What we've been speaking about on Discord. Nice little accumulation. It ran. Hell of a nice move. Starts to reverse. COVID happens. Fall off. Fighting for it. Everyone's saying, nope, it's going to die, going to die. Well, guess what? It reclaims the zone. Okay, actually landed right on the number. I was a little dicey. That's a 2-week for me. I am going to switch to the 1 week because it actually is a little bit clearer. So we actually landed right on the number, right there, 69.08, 69.08. Perfect, nice, but I would have liked to see it a little higher. Next week, get you right into the level. At that point, we said on Discord, this guy definitely seems destined to test 7,800. Certainly we did that, but then when you got there, you needed to close above this level on the weekly scale. That's right there. We got that closed the previous week. and that set up this week's big move, right? So it's just station to station, range to range at this point, pretty simple stuff. And then this one, guess what? You then also gain this little level right here, right? Now, you also gain this level. I don't even have it marked off because I think when I look at this, what I expect. Now, by the way, I'm talking about it's like it's closed. That's why I was on futures before. The point I was making is that the futures is closed. So on futures, you have gained this level. Of course, with spot, we don't know yet. So this will be something to watch. Can we hold this level, which is spot, let's call it, 86.96, technically 85.90, right? So say 85.90 or better. It's like, all right, I'm over there. I'm over that range. On the daily, what we called it is 85.28 on Discord, right, guys? We went with the 85.28 number, which is right here, right? So this is that number right there. Actually, it looks like it's 85.29. What do we have? Resistance right here. We resisted the area, finally broke through, came back, a little back up, held that area right there. 85.29, forgive me, I said 28 is 29. Went again. But you end up getting this little zone here to where really, I guess now this makes sense. This is, oh yeah, the 85.28, forgive me. So this is the level I'm looking at. So right here is the one. That's why I got that green line there. So 85.28, which is right there, is the level you want to hold. And in fact, that actually matches on a 4-hour. You don't get that a lot. Let me see if it matches on a 12-hour. It doesn't always work that way. Yeah, it just happened to be a 4-hour close, 12-hour close, daily close. So you do get it. And in this case, any one of those, I wouldn't want to see a break on a closing basis because now you're opening yourself up to a lot of air, right? Because to get here, you didn't have a lot of room. You put yourself into a tough situation. Now, maybe a lot of people might say, well, I want 86.27 to hold. But regardless, you're in a situation where if you lose this level 85.28, in my opinion, you're now hoping for some topside catch right there, which can happen. But it's a little range there, and you say, all right, well, now I need that level to hold. But the bigger area is this one, and I would say this is double-sided because it's I would combine this to be the daily and the 4-hour, let's just call it like 75 to 78 range, with the 78 and 79 being the real key there that you would really want to hold because it starts to get dicey if you fall into that range. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that if you put yourself into a position where you lose this level, we'll talk about the bull side in a minute, but lose this level right here, you're now opening the door to the test of this level for sure, and possibly a deeper dive here first to this guy. You see this guy right here? He's just standing out waiting for us on the 12-hour. So you do start to get a little bit of cluster of areas that can hold. The 4-hour looks even a little better. Gives you a lot more areas there. You say, all right, well, I got some more areas here that can hold. Dating back to here and here. So those could be some levels where you can see some swing failures or something along those lines. But there's a lot of air here, right? So be careful. The other thing I would say now for the bulls, a little bit different. On the bull side, we're going to zoom in a little bit. And I would say this. I'd say, look, we're starting to see this play out a little early to be doing this, but I can kind of draw a little bit of a level like this. I'll draw my low. Since this low is kind of ugly on a big candle, a little bit of a doji here, I can draw this like this. Ideally, you'd like to see this thing start to hold, right? If it doesn't hold, this is not one of these end-of-the-world patterns where you say, oh, we're going to lose it. No, not at all. But it does mean you're getting another test likely back into this area, and you're going to look for, again, what we just discussed, hoping that 85.28 holds on an H4 on a 4-hour close, right? At that point, if that starts to happen, patterns morph, that's very normal, then we can start to talk about a turn. And I would look for that on the 4-hour. Now, if the 4-hour is going to turn, when it does happen, you usually start to see that. The only time I ever use this paintbrush is when I'm talking to you guys. Okay, here's it. That's why I never know where it is. So basically, you really want it to start happening pretty soon if you could. Otherwise, you're asking for a good amount. Now, if it gets what we call oversold, right? Obviously, I don't like the word oversold. Everyone knows that, but yeah, my point is you get to an oversold scenario on H4, really going to depend where it's at. If you start to turn up here on one of your stochastic indicators or whatever you like to use for momentum, and if you're over that level, good job. You might get a little dicey again where you lose the level, inch your candle, meaning the H4, just like this. We talked about this one actually the other day on Discord as well, right? It was literally in the candle. This candle looked terrible. It was lower low on the 1 hour, lower low on the 2 hour. And what we said is, look, this could be a swing failure right here. Then I know a lot of people say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you say that? Well, because if you're gonna make one, this is the place to do it, right? I mean, ultimately, you're in a position to where you didn't have a lot more levels beyond that, and it made sense to hold that 85-28 that we discussed, and it ended up doing it. So good job, right? So sometimes you'll see that where it'll put that little candle wick in for you, and then you try to work it lower, and it's really just setting it up to pop it back again. So it made for some good trading already. There's already been a lot of great trading because we're talking about a healthy range here. So there's a lot of room to make money on lower time frames if that's your thing. How do you do that? Again, just be wise and understanding that, hey, drop off points of where? 185.28. If you're trying to take off, really you could just take this high right here now on the 4 hour, which is 90.75 ish. Let me just look around real quick. I would have thought, I know I seen like 9,200 ish, was looking a little. This is spot, that's why. Yeah, I think this is fine to use this. This is 90.75 is the number there. So, yeah, again, we're going to see how this guy starts to map itself out. Personally, I don't like to buy the breakouts. I'm not into breakouts, so I like to formulate the ideas as they're pulling back and making those turns. Of course, you got to trade the way you trade, specifically what makes sense for you in your mind. But ultimately, that's how I would look for it. If I start to see that the momentum's tailing off, I get myself a little bit of a indecision type candle, like this is a doji or something like that. That would have been a decent idea here. If this guy would have popped lower as an example, and you start to see a little bit of a local low, pop the other way, something like that. So if I get to see that, maybe I will take another play and another crack. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see this come back and try to run the high again, and basically go from there. Now, I'll look at what happens over the weekend because I'm not a big weekend trader anyway. When I say not a big weekend trader, I rarely trade on the weekends, right? But ultimately, I do like to gauge what took place because a lot of times that'll mean like, all right, well, let's see the follow through. A lot of times in the stock market, what you would end up seeing is like Friday would look like Monday. Not so much how it works anymore in modern days, but back in the day, that's kind of how it used to work. You'd say, all right, well, Friday's down, Monday's probably going to be down, right? Friday was booming, and Monday would probably be booming, and that's something that the old timers used to do. But in this case, what we usually see here is you see a little bit of an opposite reaction more often than not, right? So if the weekend crowd tries to take it up, let's expect maybe some pullback before then. If they try to take it down, maybe we expect a little bit of a false rally before it goes back the other way or something along those lines. So we'll kind of wait and see on that. But anyway, just wanted to give you an update. I don't think there's a lot more than that. I'll give you more as we go along. Great job. Great rally no matter what. I mean, if this was the top of it, so be it. And a hell of a move. I mean, all you really need or want are big moves. This level here came down to 8,400. So on a daily scale, you would want to see this guy right there. Really, you want to hold the low, right? But if you don't hold the low, so if you see it make a lower low, which is basically, I'm not going to draw it perfectly, but it looks like it's 86.27. That's going to open that door to test your intraday low there. And then that's going to open the door, obviously, for much lower numbers, right? Because you're in a position here to where, so far as this is not holding up terribly, it looks worse because of the extended wick. But if you look at it just from this perspective, and I'll be the first to tell you, like, hey, you can't look at it from this perspective. But if you look at it from this perspective and say, hey, look, I'm just going to look at the big day, just the big candle, maybe even just the body of the big candle, right? So let's look at the body. So far, we barely retraced a thing. In fact, we're higher than we were at the close of that day at the time we'd be making this particular video. But even in the close, I mean, it wasn't even 20% off on the candle itself. Now, it's exaggerated based on the fact that, yeah, you ran up and extended the next day, and finally some people were willing to take some profits off the table, but this is pretty damn bullish. I mean, there's a lot of bullish elements here. And when I say bullish, does that mean like it's going to run and take off to 10.5? No, it could. You take out this high, that's the next stop for sure. There's some resistance in here, logical resistance in here. We talked about 9.2 to 9.5 is tough. If you can get past that, that's what I'm saying, then there's another little spot right there, a little spot right there, but it would make sense just to try to, at scale, test this guy again as well. So that would make a lot of sense. But the point I'm making when I say bullish is that you're going to hang around in this area. To me, after such a run, seeing that type of sideways, which we have not seen yet. Remember, obviously, we're only in the second day here, but I'm saying if this was a range candle and we're going to build out a range within this candle and build out, 1, 2, 3, 4, something along those lines. I think this was like a TD9 time to mark, TD sequential 9. So if you then build out sideways after that, it's pretty damn impressive. meaning you would expect a pullback. I mean, that's the thing that people don't understand. It, we haven't seen it. You say, oh, you pulled back off the intraday. That's not how I look. I mean, a lot of people that I know that are in the know, for my opinion, that kick ass trading and done it for years, they still use line charts. So they wouldn't even be concerned about where it went intraday. I don't use a line chart too often, except for some specific measurements. But the point is, let's say we close in this range, you're still closing higher than where we closed 2 days ago. So I'm beating a dead horse on that one. Obviously, I'm just making a point to not overthink things too much and say, oh, wow, look, the action looks terrible. You lose 85.28, it can quickly look pretty shaky, in my opinion, right? But that hasn't happened. I'm talking about 85.28 on a 4-hour close. But you've also built in some areas here. I like this spot right there. We talked about 7,500, 7,800 as a real key right here, which was your resistance there. I'm not drawing this perfectly, of course. Sometimes you get the top side. So there's a few layers here that look interesting to hold. You lose this level now. You start losing that 70, let's call it 7,900 type of range. Even this guy, yeah. Now you're opening yourself all the way back down to 6,600. So we don't need to talk about that just yet because we're not there, but you'll know down the line that if that starts to come, that's what we'll be looking at. If you got questions, hit me up on Twitter with a direct message. My guys on Discord can certainly do the same. If there's something you want me to address in the next video, let me know. I know some guys wanted me to get into the SPX. I do apologize. I certainly don't have the time to do that today, but if you have some questions on that, let me know, and I'll happily look into it. You know what? I'm going to feel bad, so let me just type into the wrong keyboard for a 15th time. Let me just look at the SPX real quick. I did get that request. All right. Daily scale. All right. Pretty obvious. A little bit of a local top here. Let me see what we're looking at. I'm not ready to write it off as a death sentence, but this is not. Usually this is something a little bit ugly. So I want to see, though, stocks are a little bit different. When you're looking at the SPX, you're talking about 500 of these guys, right? So from that perspective, let's see. It looks like it wants to cool off a little bit, but the scaling is a little bit different. Now, we talked about this before. This was like my key level. This was 29.54. I'm not going to be able to go into too much detail on it, but I was talking about, hey, let's see what happens when we get to, and it was weekly scale. Right here, right? So this was my level right here. Was a 29.54. Look at that. Right? Yeah, 29.54. I didn't even realize that we hit it to the nose like that, did we? We did. Right on the nose. All right, so that was my level that I thought was interesting because, look, we obviously had this gap down here, but here you had this little bit of an issue where it really tried here. This was some logical support. It really did try. By the way, if you guys remember this chart on Twitter, we nailed this thing. We nailed this stopping point. We nailed, I think we said, a 24% minimal bounce. It bounced more than that to the day, by the way, but no big deal. The thing here is that you are above the 200 on the weekly. Look, the Fed stepped in big time. I know people hate that. Oh, the printer, this, burr, that. I get the jokes. I understand. Maybe it's terrible for the economy forever. All those things might be absolutely true. I'm not arguing any of that. But what I do know is that you just threw a lot of money in the system. So a lot of stocks are doing pretty damn well. Some are doing terrible. And you get the same type of situation. At the moment, is this a dead cat? Might be. It absolutely might be. If you start to see this guy peel down next week, it gets dicey for sure for the old S&P. So that's something that I would bring up and say, hey, definitely shaky. For me, though, I'm not looking to take high time frame type of trades on this guy just yet, especially with all the action that's going on with the Fed. I almost rather it than fail a little bit, give me another brief fake out rally, and then start to say, hey, let's pile on some shorts. A lot of people talk about a V recovery, like, hey, a V recovery. This isn't the V recovery. This is something, this is the rooster, right? You basically come in and then it's kind of thinking, right? So I wouldn't be shocked at all. This may not happen. I'm not calling it, right? But you see how you got this little area here where you set these levels just like this, right? Maybe you start to build something out in a range and give it some time. Say, all right, look, there's trillions of dollars in the system. They say they're coming with trillions more. Let's give it some time to figure out what kind of recovery we're going to have. Because at the moment, we're floating the system enough with some money. Yes, some people are struggling, but this could be something that could happen. I know people would say, hey, alt season, but unfortunately, there's no alt season in S&P. So the idea, though, is you might see something like that. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just saying I'm open to that idea. Let's just kind of wait and see on it. But I promise you this. If I see a real clear short on it, I'll do it. I'm not one to fade significant momentum. This is sharp. Now, I get it. This was far worse. Of course it was. But this is a hell of a rally. I mean, that is a hell of a rally. There's no other way to look at it. That's on a weekly scale. So if I bring that thing to a daily, now normally I would say, look, this is a rejection of the 200. It's a local top. You had that gap down there. But there's a lot of things that went on. Amazon got hit after earnings. One good day by Amazon and things back. So you just have to kind of have an understanding for the S&P more than anything else. Not to mention the fact, if I'm being honest with you, when I'm trading the S&P, I'm doing it intraday, usually, more often than not. Doesn't mean I won't build a position, maybe look for reasons to get into something, but on an intraday basis, yeah, I can look for a lot of reasons. Now, I might take the higher time frame and then fade the rally, right? So if I can fade a rally on the 1 hour, that might make sense for me. Maybe we close this gap, start to look like we're setting in a local top. I'm happy to short that, and then just kind of watch. Maybe I'll start with a trade that is an intraday to possibly swing trade, and it grows into something bigger, right? That happens a lot. Let's say I was trying to build along in here somewhere. It's like, all right, well, we gapped up, we came, we put in this little candle and overtook it. I might have taken a long here. I did not, by the way, but I might have taken a long here and then just let it kind of grow into something more. I'll probably get out on that candle because that was a terrible candle, but I'm just making a point, right? That ultimately that can happen to where you might start off, and of course I'm on a low time frame, but looking at it at a different scale, you might start off at something and say, hey, I'm going to open up a trade here. This gave you room. Your stop was probably there anyway. It gaps up. Okay, I didn't mean to hold on, but it's looking okay. Gaps up, fades back. No, not so bad, not so bad. And next thing you know, you're into a good hole because you're in so much profit. So you could sometimes, you move your anchor, right? You move the chart that you originally based the trade off of because you gain some support and resistance levels, and that might allow for that. So that's sort of how I would do it because I don't want to get caught off sides. So to answer your question, yes, I understand the downside completely. I completely understand the how and the why of it. There's probably some things that would make me feel a little bit different. Let me kind of bring this up real quick. But here's my issue, right? Daily scale, not bad here, right? What's happening? Moving averages are coming together. What's going to happen? A big move. But a big move doesn't tell me which way it's going, right? A sharp move of some sort. Granted, that might be to the downside. Maybe the downside's more logical. But I'm not playing blackjack, right? I'm not trying to double up on 11. This is trading. So I would like to have a better feeling on this. I don't want to be in this position where I say, big move's coming. No, I'd rather say, hey, big move's coming. Yes, that's true. Something sharp's coming. Of course, in the S&P, that could play out for a couple weeks. But yes, moving averages are coming together. When that happens, you tend to see something more explosive. I'd rather wait and then react, maybe on the retest of whatever occurs or something along those lines. Or if I see money on the floor, meaning that the picture gets clearer for me, yes, at that time I'll go over there and I'll pick it up, meaning I'll set the trade at that point. At the moment, I'm not sure because this could easily come, hold this 21, reclaim my 8, go back up and take another run at this 200. It's very normal. I would like this better if it didn't get into the 200. You understand? So if I reject it here, and this wasn't a rejection candle, guys, right? But if I would have had a rejection here, I might have said, oh, a little shaky. Now, I would have been a little worried here about a moving average squeeze, and that's what ended up playing out. But the idea is that you're in a position to where you have to kind of think about it and say, all right, what makes sense? Now, you see this scenario right here, once we started to fall off, you fell off. This is a perfect situation, right? You lost 200. I came back in. Now, I agree. Same thing. I prefer not to get in there, but all the moving averages are on top of me, right? So now as I fade, I got weight on top of me, and that helps to push me down, right? See, slope matters, slope matters, slope matters. Slope always matters, okay? Always. My 200s are flat. My moving averages are uptrending. My 55 is flat. That's not telling me short me. I'm sorry, it's just not doing it. I rather short down here, or as it runs back into those negative sloping moving averages, that's where I prefer to do it. All right, I'm out. I went way long with this video. Hopefully you guys are good. Stay safe. Wear a damn mask when you go outside, guys. Be the guy that's overprotective. Be the guy that's a little bit ridiculous about it. And let's all get through this together. Hopefully everyone's good. This is Mr. Anderson signing out.